Hello, welcome to e-Niro Diaries Encore. It's the 20, no, no, it's the 30th of January today. Just like to thank those who've been watching and the new subscribers. We've had a few more over the last few weeks, which is great. It's always good to click on the subscribe if you're interested in the long term, we hope the very long term ownership experience of the e-Niro. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, I put the service in for its 75,000 kilometre service, which is its fifth service. So the car's just coming up to 4 years old. We are sort of average mileage people, really. And it does make you wonder, really, what they're up to with the servicing the electric car. There's really not a lot to check. And, in terms of like the brake fluid levels and the battery system coolant levels, you can check that yourself. I'm happy that they check the brakes, even though obviously on an electric car, the brakes don't get used anything like as much as they do in a fossil fuel car. So anyway, you pay the money. They charge me €71.63. And let's see, what did they do? They nettoyant climatisation, which is cleaning the air conditioning. And they've put that on before, a couple of things. But they're not changing the air conditioning fluid, I'm sure, because that would be itemised as an item. At the end of this service, I did say to them, look, you've never given me a report on the battery health. And they said, oh, well, we check it every time. What? And I said, what? You mean like you get a readout on all the cells and the voltage on the cells, see if there are any weak cells? They said, yeah, we do that. Okay, next time, could I have a look at that then? Oh, yeah, we'll do that for you. So anyway, I mean, it's a sort of a country dealership. I live in a part of France which is, pretty sleepy. And Niort is the biggest town, which is where the dealership is. It's a pretty low pace of life kind of place. And they're very nice. They do what they're supposed to do. And in fact, last year I may have mentioned that I was getting this sort of creaking sound from the front of the car, but when they tried it, you could never hear it. Of course, whenever you sort of turn the steering wheel one way, it just made a bit of a grinding sound when you were starting off and moving slowly. After that, you never heard it. And I wasn't very hopeful, really, that they were going to do anything. So I booked it in. And I walked in all prepared to say the stuff in French that I needed to say about this strange noise coming from the front of the car. And they said, no problem, we know what this is. There's a kit to fix it. Something to do with the articulation of the wheel bearing or something. It was a known problem. And I thought, okay, so I wandered off, do a bit of shopping, came back about an hour later, and it was all done. And that was last summer, and to be honest, it's been brilliant. No problem at all. Yeah, it's an okay dealership, I guess. And I give them, some encouragement with some good reviews. But anyway, just sort of reviewing what this has cost me in terms of servicing, over 75,000 kilometres, which is about 46,000 miles, I think, and comparing it to what that would have been if I'd have gone with the Niro hybrid. And say in the last 5 services, which is nearly 4 years, spent 460 euros, let's call it. It's 459.75. Now, I've been looking up to see what I would have paid if I'd have had the Niro hybrid. Now, obviously there you've got oil changes. The service intervals are exactly the same. I guess the brakes get used a bit more on that car, so maybe you'd have had, by this mileage, some brake pads. But even assuming there were no parts that needed replacing that were outside of warranty, I've looked it up, and I've looked at the UK prices for like 3 years of servicing and similar prices in France per service. And it averages out between the two countries that Well, in the UK, your average service works out at £159. And if you have five of those and then you convert it into euros, it's just over €900. So it's about 320 euros cheaper to service the e-Niro. And as I say, some manufacturers who are only selling electric cars, obviously like Tesla, there are no regular services. You just keep an eye on it yourself, and you put it in every so often. Depending on how heavy a user of the car you are. Obviously, if you do massive mileages, if I was doing like 30, 40,000 miles a year, as I used to when I was a sort of a corporate man on the road, I'd want to put it in to have, the brakes checked and the fluid checked. Interestingly enough, two most expensive services I've had here, one was 147 euros and the other was 179. They changed the brake fluid. Now, I mean, you don't really need to change the brake fluid every 30,000 kilometers. It's interesting that companies who are making electric cars and pushing them, like MG, and in fact, my friend and I went to visit the MG dealers in Poitiers. We thought it was open. We went over on last Saturday, but it's actually not opening for another 2 weeks. They've got a wonderful looking new building right next door to the Hyundai dealers, interestingly enough, and they've got all the cars out there. They had the MG4, bright orange colour. They had the MG Marvel, the sort of SUV thing. They had the MG5, the estate car, and one of the small SUVs, MG ZS, I think it's called. And they had them all out there, and they had a little temporary office. Now, this was a Saturday morning, and there were a lot of people around, all interested in these cars. It was a bitterly cold day with a horrible biting wind, and yet they were clearly having a lot of interest. I think MG are going to do very well here. But again, I think with MG, I read somewhere that they don't want you in every 15,000 kilometers for a service. It's more like sort of every 30, 40,000. It's more realistic, and clearly, I'm only doing this because I don't want to fall foul of the 7-year warranty, which is useful to have, and I have actually used that. They fixed a small problem for me last year with a folding wing mirror that didn't fold properly. Oh, I forgot to mention that on the way back from the MG dealers, my eagle-eyed friend noticed that there was a new Tesla charging place. And so we pulled in and had a look. There are 28 charging stalls at this place. And he said, oh, do you want to just try using it? Now, I'd downloaded the app last year when Tesla made it possible for non-Tesla cars to use their chargers. But I'd never actually used it, whereas my friend with his Ioniq had used it a couple of times. So anyway, I'd already done the bank details and everything, even though I hadn't actually ever spent any money with them. And he showed me how to, use it in terms of, how it pops up on the phone and it tells you how many charges are free, and each one has a particular number. So you just go and look at the number on the inside of the charger, and you see it pop up on your phone that you're on it, and you hit it and it just starts charging. It's great. Only thing is that I was only at like 53% state of charge. It started charging at 44 kilowatts, and it dropped off after about 5 minutes to 27. I didn't really need the charge. And really, I mean, it's still much cheaper to charge at home, even though Tesla only charge 45 euro cents a kilowatt hour, which is much cheaper than Ionity or Total. So to be honest, it was so easy that on future long journeys, I'm going to actually look for Tesla superchargers. So just for the information of people who travel to France, maybe on holiday, these chargers are just at the start where you pick up the A10 to go down to Bordeaux. And I mean, if you charge up at Tesla, you'll get way past Bordeaux. It's about another 250, 300 kilometers down to Bordeaux from Poitiers. So you'll get sort of well on your way to Spain or wherever it is you may be going for somewhere more interesting than where we live. Actually, we love where we live. So, but anyway, just sort of mention that that there are lots of Tesla charging places popping up all over France, and certainly quite easy to use. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you found that interesting. Until the next time.